name's Ken Farbstein, and we live in Needham, Massachusetts. We've had the system since July. It's almost 2 years now. And so we have on the roof a nice rectangular space. We have 3 panels by 10, so there are a total of 30 panels, about 450 square feet. And so it's been great for us. Generates about 2/3 of the electricity that we use. I've been interested in solar energy for a long time, and then it turned out that I saw an article in the Boston Globe that talked about the economics of it. It seemed like it was really different, and so I looked into it and talked to a sales guy at Sunlight Solar, and who then emailed me about the incentives that were coming up. That was going to be we're going to make it very profitable, really, to get solar. And so I talked about it with my wife, and she said, well, she said, well, you need to give me a monthly cash flow model of how you have to, let's see how it looks really month by month, because sometimes the numbers get a little funky. And so I went back and crunched a bunch of numbers, and it looked like it made sense for us. So given there are a bunch of different incentives, and they all came together, and it really worked out well for us. Yeah, we got a loan for the whole amount. So because the payback seemed to work better for us that way. So we got a loan over, I think, 15-year period. And then later we rolled it into a 10-year mortgage, when we refinanced our mortgage. And basically, so the way it works, that the monthly mortgage, the monthly payment that we make on the loan is almost exactly the same as the savings. So there are 2 kinds of savings. We get about $105, $110 a month off our electricity bill on average, some more some months than others, but on average 100 and something. And then from the SRECs, the Solar Renewable Energy Credits, it's a quarterly chunk of money that we get, and that's about $1,000 a quarter. So if you kind of think, well, that's about $300 and some a month, plus the 100 from the electricity savings, it's almost exactly the amount of the monthly loan. So it's even. So we're even that way. But then when we first got the system, the 30% federal tax credit, that in April of tax season, do your taxes, and then in May, the first year, less than a year after getting the system, we got a check from Uncle Sam for, it was more than $15,000. Oh, wow. So because, and so that might have a son in college, so that was immediate. The way I think of it was, well, that was, 4 months of college payments, They were, right in our lap. Mm-hmm. Just landed in our lap. So, so when you think about that, we're ahead of the game, and then we're month to month, we're even.
Okay.
So yeah, it's profitable. The math of the way the incentives work is kind of complicated for people to understand if they're not, if math is hard.
With the tax credits and state tax
credits?
Yeah,
because there's a 30% federal tax credit, which you get back, from the IRS, and there's a state rebate. That's pretty easy. That's a flat. For us, it was a flat, $5,500 off the purchase price. Sunlight Solar gave us a couple of options for which panels to buy, and some were Chinese-made and cheaper, but weren't quite as effective, and the others were the SunPower, which were made in America, made in California, and are more efficient. They just work better. And in looking at the math and the subsidies and so forth, the incentives built in, that I realized that it made more sense for us to get the more expensive ones, because the federal tax credit is 30% of the total price, basically. So the higher the price is, the more you get back. And especially given the efficiency, it just seemed that it was more cost effective for us to use the SunPower, the American-made ones. So we did that. It was kind of an odd, just counterintuitive realization. A couple, 3 weeks from the time they started.
Okay, what would your
And that's
experience
including that, you know, so that first the utility guy from NSTAR came out and put on a special kind of smart meter on the outside. So that including that time, which wasn't really Sunlight Solar. Well, sometimes people ask me if there's maintenance or what you do to maintain the system or take care of it, and there's really nothing. I mean, there are no moving parts, you know. So there's not a lot that can go wrong, as I understand it.
when did you install the system?
It was installed in July, mid-July, 2 years ago.
So in 2 years, have you done anything to the panels, or have you had to do any maintenance? Nothing at all.
You know, the rain cleans it. I mean, you know. Well, people ask about snow, what happens when it snows, and what we noticed was, like, if there's less than about 4 or 5 inches of snow at a time that's fallen, that it just melts itself pretty quickly. It's pretty striking, starting with the edges. The edges melt first, and then it's black, and so it catches the heat, it warms it up, and it melts toward the middle, you know, and the snow is gone in a few hours. If there's more than that, it takes a little longer. But the SRECs, I think, are just hard for people to kind of get their heads around what they are. For me, the way I imagine SRECs is kind of through an analogy. You know, in the Middle Ages, when somebody was concerned they had been sinning, that they could go to the church and pay a dispensation, just give the church a lump sum check, you know, a pile of gold, and they would buy that dispensation, you know, then they'd be clean, okay, in the eyes of the church. So I think of it as much the same, where these big utility companies are putting a lot of greenhouse gases and CO, you know, in the air, and they've got to pay a dispensation to kind of even out for their sins. And so the renewable energy credit is designed to clean the slate for them. So by law, they have to pay, they have to buy these offsets, you know, from people who have solar systems, and so that's auctioned off. The aggregator takes care of it, and so we don't really have to deal with it. But it kind of makes them clean, kind of balances the scales at the end. It's really pretty effortless. I mean, Sunlight Solar had recommended a particular aggregator, you know, a company that puts together all the homeowners' credits, and in fact, and then sells them in the auction. You know, they take care of it. So we just signed that little 2-page contract at the beginning, and then we get checks in the mail, you know, every quarter. And I get an email from them once in a while saying, well, this, in the most recent auction, this is the price at which they sold, and FYI. So, you know, but it's really been effortless. On average, it saves, you know, a little over $100 a month. And, you know, so some 2 or 3 months of the year, usually in the spring, we, instead of getting an electric bill, we get a credit from the NSTAR. It says, you know, well, you don't owe anything, you know, you owe 0, or in fact, you know, it's a credit, and so they deduct. If there is an electricity bill the next month, then they'll deduct that from the bill. So that's when it happens. So we have, you know, this unfinished basement down here. The inverter is down here. This is the inverter, and so here's our, you know, our fuse panel. So when Sunlight Solar came in, they put in kind of everything from here over there, and so I really don't know too much about it, but the inverter converts the direct current into alternating current, so from DC into AC, because in this country everybody uses, you know, AC for the electricity. And so this thing kind of shows you here on the readout, like the energy today, you know, how many kilowatts today, and then it cycles through, so you can see from time to time. And then wait just a second, and then so I don't know what some of these things mean, but then.
So everything's monitored.
It's all monitored. H today, 4.9 hours, 7.5 kilowatt hours so far today. So far today, it's a nice sunny day. We're recording this. It's now mid-June, and so 7.5 kilowatt hours already today. Our system often produces on sunny days, more than 40 kilowatt hours in a day. So then there's meter up here, emergency off switch. And what's kind of interesting that if you want to really monitor, you want to really know how much you're producing, that the system then transmits the information about how much it's producing to the internet through this kind of thing. It's like a modem that sends the data, and then we can look. There's a website that has specifically about our house and what today's production is. So if you wanted to know, it shows it minute by minute, or then in historically hour by hour, day by day, and so forth. So it's kind of interesting to see that, how that works. And then the other thing that here, so here's our fuse panel, and so Sunlight Solar put in these two for the photovoltaic solar and PV solar down here. And as I understand it, that the electricity, let's see, how does it is actually comes into the panel, and then so our house gets first dibs on it. So our refrigerator, TV, lights, and everything, air conditioning, get first dibs on it, and then anything beyond that is sent up and out to the grid, to N-Star. So whatever we don't use, we send out, and then of course it just pulls from the grid when we, at night or when we need it. About the reasons that led us to buy the Sunlight Solar, and so a lot of it was economic, but a lot is also about our own. We're green. I mean, we try to, we have a compost heap out back, and we recycle everything we can, and I even bike around in town instead of using a car when I can, to just use less fossil fuel. So, because part of it is that environmentalist ethic, and so that was really a big consideration as well. Secondarily, that we just kind of like the idea of making our own electricity, not we're earthy crunchy in that way per se, but just not burning the the nuclear fuel or the coal or oil that that the utilities use in New England. That's that was a big part of it. Yeah, I have referred a couple of my tennis buddies, who have gotten solar systems.
So they fit pretty flush to your roof then?
It's really, it looks like it was designed to be there,
Any leaks or anything? No?
No. And I was worried, so we were going to have that real high winds, like almost hurricane force winds. Was it last year, I think?
Yep.
There was once, and so I called Justin, to ask Justin Hubbard to ask him about that and say, well, is it possible that the winds could rip off the panels or something? He said, no, they're rated. I forget what, some real high wind speed.
120 miles an hour.
Something like that. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
So.